I was going to get one.
So you said you were going to get a gun.
Yeah, but I wasn't going to get it. Really?
And you said you were going to do well with the gun.
Oh, I was going to, I don't know. I was angry. I said, I'm going to threaten them, or maybe just shoot or something. I had no idea. I mean, I was threatened.
Martin Scorsese has spent more than half a century redefining cinema. From Taxi Driver and Raging Bull to The Irishman and Killers of the Flower Moon, his films capture the raw intensity of human struggle and moral complexity. At 82, he remains one of the few filmmakers whose every project is considered an event. Alongside his movies, Scorsese's candid interviews have kept him in the public eye, though they're often misquoted or twisted for sensational headlines.
A lot of problems, but we had a good basis. What we did there basically was a very low budget, about $1 million all in. And this is 1975. And De Niro had just won the Academy Award for Godfather 2. And they had just seen my film Mean Streets, and which De Niro was also in. They figured they sold the two of us together into a sort of package for Taxi Driver.
One recent example? Clickbait articles claiming Scorsese finally revealed the 7 actors he hated most. In truth, Scorsese almost never talks about actors in terms of dislike. Instead, he spends his energy praising those who impress him, inspire him, and push him to new creative heights. If anything, he has built his career on long-standing partnerships with actors he deeply admires.
His family, my mother and father weren't well educated. Second generation, I guess, Italian American. There was no tradition of reading in the house, no books.
Over the years, Scorsese has named and celebrated performers across generations. From Hollywood icons he grew up idolizing to the new talents he discovered in his later projects. What emerges is less a list than a constellation of influences and collaborators who shaped his vision. Let's count down the 7 actors Scorsese has most openly admired, using his own words as proof. Number 7. Brendan Fraser, a wonderful actor and perfect fit. When Martin Scorsese cast Killers of the Flower Moon 2023, he had to balance a sprawling ensemble of both seasoned stars and emerging talents. Among the supporting roles was that of attorney W.S. Hamilton, a fiery lawyer who represents oil tycoon William Hale during a pivotal trial. For the part, Scorsese turned to Brendan Fraser, a choice that surprised some but delighted the director.
The responsibility we have, too, as entertainers, so to speak, maybe taking advantage of the tragedy and the suffering of what we've just shown by making entertainment. But if the entertainment could sustain, and it could be something that has depth, and maybe it's something that an audience could still resonate.
Fraser, fresh off his Oscar-winning performance in The Whale, was returning to major studio projects after years of being sidelined.
I thank the Academy for this honor and for our studio A24 for making such a bold film. And I'm grateful to Darren Aronofsky for throwing me a creative lifeline and hauling me aboard the good ship The Whale.
When critics described his courtroom performance in Killers of the Flower Moon as overly theatrical, Scorsese was quick to defend him. In an interview with LAD Bible, he said, "We thought he'd be great for the lawyer, and I admired his work over the years. He's a wonderful actor, and he was just great to work with." He added that Fraser's size and commanding presence were exactly what the role demanded. That girth, he's big in the frame, perfect for the part. What stands out here isn't just Scorsese's praise, but his loyalty. Rather than brushing aside criticism, he doubled down on his choice, explaining that Fraser delivered precisely what the story needed. For Scorsese, it wasn't about realism in the narrow sense, but about cinematic truth.
Separate there. Hand them over. Up because they're coming at you, they're doing all the stuff. Right. This will give you a little more room.
A lawyer like Hamilton had to dominate the courtroom, and Fraser's voice, stature, and expressive delivery conveyed that power. Behind the camera, Scorsese also emphasized how much he enjoyed working with Fraser. He noted that despite only being on set for a few weeks, Fraser fit right in with a company that included Robert De Niro and Leonardo DiCaprio. That kind of endorsement speaks volumes. Scorsese is known for cultivating a family-like trust among his collaborators, and Fraser immediately earned his place in that circle.
Bill steps up and he takes the two of them, come on, I want to say a few words kind of thing. Come on, and
So what does this tell us about Scorsese's values? He admires actors who throw themselves fully into their roles, even if the results are bold or divisive. Fraser, like many of Scorsese's favorites, refuses to play it safe. His willingness to go big, to risk being criticized, aligns perfectly with Scorsese's belief that cinema is about taking chances. And here's a question for you. Do you think Scorsese was right to defend Brendan Fraser's big courtroom performance? Or do you prefer a more restrained approach in scenes like that? Number 6. Lily Gladstone, a perfect cinema face. One of the great joys of Martin Scorsese's later career has been discovering new talent and giving them space to shine alongside Hollywood legends. In Killers of the Flower Moon 2023, the breakout star was Lily Gladstone, who played Molly Kyle, an Osage woman whose family is targeted in a conspiracy of greed and murder. Gladstone's performance, defined by quiet strength and emotional restraint, left such an impression that Scorsese himself could not stop praising her. In an interview with Lad Bible, Scorsese described what set her apart. She could be saying nothing, but you feel everything going on behind her eyes. There's so much going on inside of her, and it's reflected in a very still way. He called her face a perfect cinema face, comparing her to the silent film actors of the 1920s and 30s, who could communicate volumes without uttering a word.
And in a way, intentionally, meets Ernest Burkhart, who is under her employ as her driver.
For Scorsese, this ability is invaluable. In a medium where every flicker of emotion can be magnified on the big screen, subtlety often carries more weight than grand gestures. Gladstone's performance as Molly conveyed dignity, heartbreak, and resilience, embodying the soul of the story. She became the moral anchor of the film, grounding its sprawling narrative in personal tragedy. It's telling that Scorsese placed so much trust in an actor relatively new to mainstream audiences.
First day that I worked with him, my hands were shaking naturally because, DiCaprio. But after getting through those initial nerves,
He has long championed young or overlooked performers, from Harvey Keitel in Mean Streets to Sharon Stone in Casino. With Gladstone, he once again demonstrated his eye for talent and his faith in actors who can express deep truth through minimal means. The collaboration also highlighted Scorsese's belief that authenticity matters. Casting an actress of Blackfeet and Nez Perce heritage to play an Osage woman brought cultural depth to the role. Gladstone herself spoke about how Scorsese respected indigenous traditions on set, ensuring accuracy and sensitivity in how the Osage story was told.
narrative, and if you're playing the complicity, then it doesn't work. You play the love, and the complicity and the betrayal comes out of what is built with the love there.
Her performance went on to earn critical acclaim, including an Academy Award nomination, marking her as one of the most promising talents of her generation.
I needed to experience that as Lily, and it was so important because that's what created the community, and that's what really drove the tragedy of it. I feel like, Marty, a lot of the things that you've expressed about working on this film and working there.
But even beyond awards, Scorsese's words about her artistry carry immense weight. When one of cinema's greatest directors declares that you embody the essence of film acting, it's a career-defining moment.
On the screen, and the emotional impact of what appears to be a kind of a minimal movement, very internal.
So let's pose the question. Do you agree with Scorsese that a cinema face can be more powerful than dialogue? Can the stillness of an actor like Gladstone outshine more flamboyant performances, even when sharing the screen with legends like De Niro and DiCaprio? Number 5. Adam Driver, among the best of his generation. Martin Scorsese has worked with many established stars, but every so often he encounters a younger actor who reinvigorates his sense of what cinema can do. One such moment came with Adam Driver, who played the Jesuit priest Sebastião Rodrigues in Silence, 2016. The film, a meditative exploration of faith and suffering in 17th century Japan, demanded extraordinary dedication from its cast. For Scorsese, Driver's performance was unforgettable. At the Telluride Film Festival in 2019, Scorsese told an audience that Driver had left him awestruck.
It is focused, I would say, is the best way I can describe it. You don't really have energy for anything other than that because, you know, you're hungry and you're cold and the weather is unpredictable, so you're kind of at its mercy. And but you can't, be unfocused because you never know when it's gonna.
He praised Driver's commitment to the role, especially the physical transformation. Driver lost a significant amount of weight to realistically portray a missionary enduring starvation and persecution. But Scorsese emphasized that it wasn't just the physical sacrifice that impressed him. It was the way Driver carried quiet intensity, the way he let silence and stillness speak. Scorsese declared him one of the best, if not the best, actors of his generation. That's no small compliment. Coming from a director who has worked with Robert De Niro, Leonardo DiCaprio, Joe Pesci, and Daniel Day-Lewis, the remark positioned Driver in the highest echelon of modern actors. For Scorsese, it was clear that Driver wasn't just a rising star, he was already a major force in contemporary cinema. What struck Scorsese most was Driver's ability to inhabit both blockbuster roles, Star Wars, and deeply personal dramas, Patterson, Marriage Story, with equal conviction.
For anything, any relationship, it's not as simple as making the commitment to do it, and then everything else is just resolved by faith. And also just the theme, I mean, kind of like in a, worldview. It's very much a story about a culture that feels attacked.
Scorsese admires actors who take risks, who don't settle for typecasting. Driver's varied career proved he was more than a Hollywood face. He was an artist. It's also worth noting that silence was a passion project for Scorsese, one he tried to make for nearly 30 years.
Gives up his faith to gain his faith, and that's the paradox. And when we were getting ready to make the picture, I realized that I was trying to create something that had been with me for many years since I was a teenager when I first wanted to make movies. And as I said earlier, I'd studied for the priesthood, didn't make it. Realized early on that it wasn't my calling. It's certainly a vocation, but it wasn't mine.
To finally realize it, he needed actors who could endure its grueling emotional and physical demands. In Driver, he found someone who could translate immense inner conflict onto the screen with authenticity.
At all, and is very openly kind of complaining and tired, and which I love. But when he gets tested, he rises to the occasion, where
Driver himself has spoken about how working with Scorsese shaped him. He described the director as deeply collaborative, someone who demands honesty but never imposes. That mutual respect reflects Scorsese's larger philosophy. He doesn't just direct actors, he chooses those who can challenge him as much as he challenges them.
Ideally, it's stories that deserve to be told, but also with an aesthetic or an artistic, how should I put it? The aesthetics of it should enhance the journalistic idea, let's say, or...
Here's something to think about. Do you agree with Scorsese's bold claim that Driver may be the best of his generation? Or do you think another actor, perhaps Joaquin Phoenix or Timothée Chalamet, better represents the current era? Number 4. John Wayne, from childhood hero to serious actor. Martin Scorsese often speaks about the films that shaped him as a sickly child growing up in Little Italy. Asthmatic and unable to play sports, he spent hours in movie theaters, where larger-than-life figures filled the screen. Among them was John Wayne, a star who, for Scorsese, became more than just a cowboy icon. He was proof that acting could be both commanding and deeply human. In a 2006 interview for American Masters, Scorsese recalled being transfixed by Howard Hawks' Western Red River, 1948. Watching Wayne's portrayal of the stern cattleman Thomas Dunson, Scorsese said he zeroed in on Wayne as a serious actor. He remembered thinking that Wayne's presence was biblical, remarking that Wayne convinced him he was the godfather of the Old Testament.
We're being represented by men who are kowtowing to minorities where they can get votes. and I think it's bad for our country, and I am sad to see.
That statement captures the awe young Scorsese felt. Wayne didn't just play a character, he embodied an archetype. Scorsese would later call John Ford's The Quiet Man, 1952, one of the most beautiful things ever put on film, pointing again to Wayne's blend of toughness and tenderness. The film showed Wayne not only as a rugged screen hero, but also as someone capable of conveying vulnerability, longing, and deep romantic emotion.
She's married to one of the greatest pilots in the
world,
and now she's afraid to fly.
But if he's piloting, it's not so bad.
Oh, I see.
For a budding filmmaker like Scorsese, it was a revelation that action stars could also deliver emotional truth. Wayne's influence on Scorsese went beyond admiration. It informed his understanding of screen presence, how a performer could dominate a scene not through constant dialogue, but through stillness, stature, and subtle expression. This concept would later echo in Scorsese's own collaborations with actors like Robert De Niro, who could hold an audience's attention with a glance or a pause. It's fascinating to consider how Scorsese's youthful idol shaped his vision of cinema. While his own films rarely resemble Wayne's westerns in style or subject, the idea of a commanding presence, an actor who embodies an entire worldview, remains at the heart of his storytelling.
The worst aspects of racism of our country, and it's right there. It's right there. And you could see the hate. You could see it building. You could also understand how he could go that way. Doesn't mean...
And here's a question for you. Do you think Scorsese's admiration for Wayne was more about the man's acting skills or the larger-than-life myths he represented? Can modern actors ever achieve the same archetypal status, or has cinema moved beyond that kind of towering heroism? For Scorsese, the answer seems clear. Wayne was both myth and man, and that duality is what made him unforgettable. Number 3. Paul Newman, irreplaceable and kind. When Martin Scorsese directed The Color of Money, 1986, he was stepping into daunting territory. The film was a sequel to Robert Rosson's The Hustler, 1961, one of the most revered dramas in American cinema. At its heart stood Paul Newman, reprising his role as pool shark Fast Eddie Felson, a character already cemented as iconic. For Scorsese, working with Newman wasn't just about making a movie. It was about collaborating with one of the most magnetic screen actors of all time. The experience was transformative. Scorsese recalled that Newman's professionalism and generosity set the tone for the entire production.
Of exploration, of lack of ego, of willingness to, jump off cliffs. And when you have that kind of...
Newman had a way of bringing emotional depth without overplaying, something Scorsese described as physical eloquence. He believed Newman could communicate more with a tilt of his head or the narrowing of his eyes than most actors could with entire monologues. That quality made Felson's return not just believable, but riveting. When Newman passed away in 2008, Scorsese issued a heartfelt statement. "It's a great loss. The history of movies without Paul Newman, it's unthinkable. His presence, his beauty, his physical eloquence, the emotional complexity he could conjure up, set a new standard." He went further, calling Newman such a fine, caring man, underscoring that admiration for him extended beyond artistry into personal character.
I've only begun this year to read emails, because emails they scare me. It says CC, and there are 1,000 names. Who are these people?
Newman won an Academy Award for his performance in The Color of Money, but for Scorsese, the award only confirmed what he already knew. Newman was irreplaceable. Their collaboration also demonstrated Scorsese's rare ability to guide an established legend into exploring new shades of a familiar role, giving Felson a weary wisdom that hadn't been present in The Hustler. What resonates most in Scorsese's reflections is the combination of reverence and warmth. He didn't just see Newman as a star. He saw him as a man who elevated everyone around him, a partner whose generosity made difficult work joyous. That dual legacy of artistry and kindness is what Scorsese has celebrated in interviews ever since. Here's a question for you. When you think of Paul Newman, do you remember the sharp-eyed pool hustler of The Hustler and The Color of Money? Or do you think first of his off-screen generosity and activism?
Was asked to do Graziano. I studied with Graziano. We almost lived together for 3 or 4 weeks.
And does Scorsese's tribute remind us that true greatness in acting must be matched by greatness in character? Number 2. Leonardo DiCaprio, one of the greatest in the history of movies. If Robert De Niro was Martin Scorsese's defining collaborator in the 1970s and 80s, then Leonardo DiCaprio became the face of his cinema in the 2000s and beyond. Their partnership began with Gangs of New York, 2002, and has since expanded to 6 major films, including The Aviator, The Departed, Shutter Island, The Wolf of Wall Street, The Irishman with a cameo tie-in, and most recently, Killers of the Flower Moon. Scorsese first encountered DiCaprio through De Niro, who had worked with him on This Boy's Life. De Niro told Scorsese, "You should work with this kid. He's really good." Scorsese remembered the recommendation, and soon DiCaprio became central to his storytelling.
Well, I think if you look at the picture, it's interesting you say it stayed with you, but the violence is done in a very flat, matter-of-fact way. There's no exhilaration in the editing of the scenes, very much the way I did in Goodfellas or...
Over the years, Scorsese has expressed not only respect, but unreserved admiration. Accepting an award, he described DiCaprio as one of the greatest actors in the history of movies. He added that he has faith in him, which is why he continues returning to DiCaprio for complex, demanding roles. Their collaboration showcased DiCaprio's range. The tortured brilliance of Howard Hughes in The Aviator, the corrupt but magnetic Jordan Belfort in The Wolf of Wall Street, and the insecure hitman in Killers of the Flower Moon. Scorsese has said he trusts DiCaprio to go to extremes, to portray characters who are morally ambiguous or outright repellent, yet still recognizably human. Few directors take as many risks with protagonists, and few actors embrace those risks as willingly as DiCaprio.
You know, I watch my fair share of movies, and you know, it's a great reference point, and it's something that he brings into the filmmaking process as well. We watch screenings of old films to get tones and themes and attitudes of the characters and looks of a film, and when we have that kind of stuff, it's something he refers back to throughout the course of the movie. Remember that scene, remember the look of that, remember the way he acted, this is the attitude that I want, this is the style that I want to bring into the film. So it is like a film course, like an education every time you step on a Martin Scorsese set.
Scorsese has also noted DiCaprio's instinct for improvisation. During The Wolf of Wall Street, many of the film's wildest and most quoted moments, such as Belfort's manic chest thumping or the infamous Quaalude crawl, came from DiCaprio's willingness to push boundaries in front of the camera. For Scorsese, this creativity epitomized what makes DiCaprio not just a star, but an artist. The collaboration is also deeply personal. Scorsese often describes their relationship as one built on trust and curiosity. He challenges DiCaprio with complex material, and DiCaprio challenges him with fearless performances. Together, they've explored themes of greed, identity, and ambition that define much of Scorsese's late career.
And I got to work with somebody who was another huge influence on myself as an actor. I mean, there's commitment, and then there's Daniel Day-Lewis. But I remember the first day, we developed this for a while, we were there for months. He built all these sets in Cinecittà Studios.
So let's ask, do you think Scorsese's faith in DiCaprio has helped the actor secure his place among the all-time greats? Or would DiCaprio have risen to that level regardless of their partnership and of all their collaborations? Which performance do you think best captures why Scorsese calls him one of the greatest in movie history? Number 1, Robert De Niro, the greatest actor of his generation. At the very top of Martin Scorsese's list of admired actors stands Robert De Niro, his first true muse and creative partner of nearly 5 decades. Their collaboration began with Mean Streets, 1973, where De Niro's unpredictable performance as Johnny Boy electrified audiences and convinced Scorsese he had found an actor who could embody the raw energy of New York streets. From there, the partnership produced a string of classics: Taxi Driver, Raging Bull, Goodfellas, Casino, The Irishman, and most recently Killers of the Flower Moon.
I mean, the way when you did Taxi Driver, for instance, I mean, you went and actually worked as a cabbie, didn't you? In New York?
Yeah.
Did anybody ever recognize you then?
Only once or twice. Once I had an actor who wanted me to take him to the airport, and he recognized me, so the whole thing was blown because I couldn't, you know, all we could do was talk about acting.
Scorsese has never hidden how he feels about De Niro. Presenting him with the Variety Creative Impact and Acting Award, he called him the greatest actor of his generation. He added that De Niro's creative influence will always be felt so long as there are actors to express their art. Such words underline that for Scorsese, De Niro is not just a collaborator, but a benchmark for acting itself. Why does Scorsese revere him so deeply? Part of it is De Niro's transformative method. He famously gained 60 pounds to play middle-aged Jake LaMotta in Raging Bull, embodying both the boxer's physical power and his destructive ego. Scorsese has often said that film might not exist without De Niro pushing him to make it, even when studios resisted. That persistence resulted in one of the most acclaimed films in history. De Niro also has a unique ability to convey menace and vulnerability in equal measure. In Taxi Driver, Travis Bickle is both terrifying and pitiful, a character whose contradictions defined an era of anti-heroes. Scorsese has pointed out that few actors could balance that kind of intensity without tipping into parody. With De Niro, every twitch of the eye or muttered line feels authentic. Beyond technique, Scorsese emphasizes the trust between them. He once said that with De Niro, "I don't have to explain much. We just look at each other," and he knows that unspoken communication is rare, the product of decades spent shaping stories together. It's why their partnership has endured while many director-actor pairings fade.
Primarily, the most exciting called improvisation was Robert De Niro in front of the mirror. And that was in the last week of shooting, and that's when we were overscheduled. And I knew that it's written in the script that he's practicing with these guns and this sort of thing, and devices in front of the mirror. He's acting out this fantasy, but I want him to say something.
Here's a question for you. Do you think De Niro's reputation as the greatest of his generation comes more from his collaborations with Scorsese? Or would his legacy be just as towering without those films? And in the long history of director-actor partnerships, is there any duo that rivals what Scorsese and De Niro have achieved? Martin Scorsese never released a neat top 7 list of actors just before turning 82. That headline is fiction. But his own words across decades of interviews and tributes leave a clear trail of admiration. These 7 actors, spanning classic Hollywood icons, longtime collaborators, and rising stars, represent the qualities Scorsese values most in cinema: authenticity, risk-taking, and emotional truth. Think about the range, from Robert De Niro, the partner who pushed him to his creative heights, to Leonardo DiCaprio, whose energy defined Scorsese's later masterpieces. From Paul Newman's grace and generosity to John Wayne's towering presence, Scorsese has celebrated legends of the past. And in more recent years, he's defended Brendan Fraser's boldness, praised Adam Driver's transformative discipline, and discovered Lily Gladstone's subtle, haunting screen presence. Together, they form a portrait of the actors who inspire Scorsese to keep making films even in his 80s. What's striking is that Scorsese doesn't just admire their performances, he admires the way they carry themselves, the risks they take, and the humanity they bring to the screen. He's drawn to actors who can fill a frame with stillness as much as with fury, who can make us laugh, cry, or recoil without losing credibility. So let me ask you, if Scorsese's admiration carries this much weight, how might it shape the way we see these actors in the future? Which of these collaborations stands out to you as the most defining moment? Not just in Scorsese's career, but in modern cinema? And perhaps the bigger question, if you had to name the one actor who has most inspired you, who would it be?